It's confirmed. We have the exact date and time for the announcement of the Sony A7C II, the A7CR, and the 16 to 35mm lens. Stick around after this short break for all the details. But first, subscribe to this channel for a chance of winning a Canon EOS R5. I'll be giving one away to one lucky subscriber once we reach 100,000 subscribers. Anybody above the age of 18 with a valid mailing address anywhere on the planet is eligible. Please read the terms and conditions in the description down below. Looks like Sony Alpha Rumors got another one right. Sony just scheduled an event for August the 29th at 10 a.m. Toronto and New York time, or 2300 hours Japanese local time. And as Sony Alpha Rumors has been saying for the past several weeks, we're going to get two successors to the Sony A7C, the A7C II and the A7CR, as well as a 16 to 35mm lens. So it's going to be a rather interesting day, and I'm going to be doing a live stream. We're going to start 1 hour before Sony's announcement, and we're going to talk about the latest leaked specs, the latest leaked images, and we're going to ask our special guests what they would do if they were Sony. What can we expect at the announcement? We'll cover the announcement live, and then we'll go right into the details about what we think of this camera, who it's marketed for, and if they've got a hit or not. All right, well, now let's talk about some of the high-level specifications of each of these cameras. The Sony A7C II is basically modeled off of the Sony A7 IV with a 33 megapixel sensor and video up to 60 frames per second in 4K. It's most likely going to have AI processing unit, but this is where we are kind of a little bit confused right now. It's supposed to have a micro HDMI port, which I can tell you isn't fun. And one other thing that makes this a little bit strange, it's going to have a single card slot. Now that in itself isn't an issue, but it's supposed to be priced at $23.99. So some of the specs don't quite line up with the price, because currently the Sony A7C sells for $15.98, and that's $200 off. I would think a price right around $1,700 or $1,800 would make more sense for the Sony A7C II. But now it's time to talk about the A7CR, which at first seemed like it might be a mini Sony A7R5, and Sony Alpha Rumors at one point said that it's going to have a lot of the capabilities as the Sony A7R5, including the exact same sensor. And that sensor is a 61 megapixel backside illuminated full frame sensor. It's going to have that same 4-axis articulating LCD. Pretty good, right? But it isn't going to have 8K 24 and 25 frames per second like the Sony A7, I was going to say CR, like the Sony A7R5. It is supposed to shoot at 10 frames per second. The video is going to cap out at 60 frames per second, so 50 and 60 frames per second in 4K. And like the A7C II and pretty much every Sony camera since the A7R5, it's going to have that AI processing unit. But this is, again, where things get a little bit strange. Now, the camera is going to have a price point of $36.99. Now, that's euros, 3,699 euros, compared to the Sony A7R5, which is priced right around, what, 4,200, in and around that price point. But this is the funny thing. It's supposed to have a single SD card slot. That's right, a single SD card slot for a camera that's a mini Sony A7R5 that's going to be priced somewhere between $400 to $600 less than the Sony A7R5. So at this point, while we do have confirmation of an announcement date and time, the way it's looking is the specs don't necessarily line up with the price points. And one thing we've seen with Sony, whenever they release a new camera, they're always very strategic about where they place it, the capabilities it has, and they're careful not to cannibalize other cameras. So to have the A7C II at just a couple of $100 less than the Sony A7 IV, well, I would get the Sony A7 IV. It's got dual card slots after all, and the exact same sensor and image processor, whereas yes, it doesn't have that AI processing unit, but again, let's take a look at the Sony A7R5, priced at around $38.98 US, and the euro equivalent somewhere around 4,200 euros. So if the A7CR is priced at around, what was it, $36.99, that's some 400 to 600 euros less, but it has a single card slot. That to me is a bit of a letdown. It doesn't do 8K 24 and 25 frames per second. I wonder what else has been shorted out here. So here's my thought. Both of these two cameras, the leaked specifications we have right now, I'm willing to bet that they're maybe 80% correct. I'm not going to assume that they're 100% correct. And the pricing information, I'm willing to believe that the pricing information isn't correct at all. At least if it is, then I can't imagine it's just going to have a single card slot, SD card slot, for both the A7C II and the A7CR. And of course, we're getting an announcement of the Sony 16 to 35 mm f2.8 GM2, and it's going to be a little bit more compact than its predecessor. And you'll notice that I have pre-order links in the bottom lower thirds here. So why is that? You obviously can't pre-order right now, and you're not going to be able to pre-order until the announcement on August the 29th. But what I've done is I've grabbed together smart pre-order links for you for B&H and Adorama for both cameras. So that way, on the day of, when you're ready to pre-order, right after the embargo's been lifted, you can use these links and it's going to show you every single package SKU, because we've got two cameras and we've got multiple kit packages. We're going to have the A7C II, the A7CR with multiple different lens kit packages. And then of course, if you're purchasing from Adorama or B&H, they're likely going to put together their own kit packages, maybe with different lens combinations, as well as, and this is a nice thing that they like to do, and if this is your first camera, they'll toss in a camera bag, memory cards, filters, and all sorts of other things, having multiple different options. So these smart pre-order links are going to list off every single option available to you at Adorama as well as B&H. So that way it's going to save you anywhere from 5 to 25 seconds, depending on how long it takes you to peruse things. And what that's going to allow you to do is to pre-order before anybody else, so that way you can get your camera before anybody else. So this is happening in just about a week. It's Tuesday, so it's just under a week. I can't wait. I can't wait for this. The way this is shaping up right now, I'm completely blown away by these two cameras, not because that they are incredible cameras with incredible specifications, but the leaks for these cameras have been rather interesting. The specifications show great promise, but then they also show some handicaps that, well, seem strange, like a single card slot on a camera priced at 3,699 euros. So is that correct? Is the pricing correct? And that's what I'm really curious to see. So stay tuned. Make sure you subscribe and choose all notifications, because I'm sure more information is going to leak out over the next couple of days up until the announcement. And you're going to want to join me August the 29th at 10 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. That's Toronto and New York time, for full coverage with my guests. We're going to talk about the latest specifications and images for all two cameras, as well as the lens, 1 hour before the announcement. Then again, we'll cover the announcement live before talking about what we think. Did Sony have a home run here? Does Sony have a home run? Is the pricing correct? How close were they to the rumors? And then, of course, take your questions. So really interesting. A lot is coming up. And again, if you want to stay up to date on the latest news and rumors regarding the Sony A7C II, the A7CR, the 16 to 35 mm, please go ahead and subscribe, and make sure you also choose all notifications. And for all those minor news and rumors, all those stories that aren't quite big enough to have their own separate video, or pricing information, or even updates to the 16 to 35 mm f2.8 GM2, well then go ahead and follow me on Twitter. X, formerly known as Twitter, because I'm always tweeting on information that isn't quite big enough to have its own separate video. But that's it for now. Thank you so much for tuning in. That live stream link might be available for you right now. If not, give it about a half an hour, because I got to schedule and get things set up. But that live stream is happening on August the 29th at 10 a.m. in the morning Eastern Standard Time. So I look forward to that, and I look forward to seeing you there and taking your questions. But that's it for now. Thank you so much for tuning in. We'll see you again soon.